Welcome to The Leftovers, a series brought to you by Flash Food. This is I don't even know how many at this point, but as you guys know, we talk to some of the brightest minds that are making the health of our planet better, the health of people, and ultimately making this world a heck of a lot more sustainable. I'm your host, Jordan Shank, and today we have someone who I have actually admired from the sides that we've never got to meet, not only in the work that he has done, but also just as a thought leader in the space that's very comparable to that of Flash Food. So it's actually a pretty cool conversation today because we can get a little more inside baseball. But we've got Ben here, who's the VP of Retail at Divert. I'll let Ben explain exactly what Divert does, but if you haven't heard it, they are probably the biggest leader in the space in terms of building a circular economy. They are effectively probably one of the number one solutions that are out there in terms of where food goes end of life within grocery retailers and many other places. And so I'm excited today for you to share that journey of the business that you've built. So
Right.
thank you, Ben, for coming today. Do
Yeah,
you just want to give a quick introduction of who you are? What is Divert? Let the community know what you've got.
perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me and thanks for the nice intro. That was great. We need like you to do those more often for us. Um, yeah, so I've been with Divert for almost 9 years now, and we are, a circular economy company that's really focused on the food system. So how do we prevent waste and go from a more linear model to, producing food, selling it in grocery stores or in restaurants, and then anything that gets wasted goes to the landfill, where there's huge environmental impacts, economic impacts, and then, of course, that's not feeding people. So one of the ways that we really focus is complementing infrastructure. So we need to build alternative solutions to landfill where we can actually process this wasted food, gather data from it, but then capture the nutrients and avoid those emissions. I mean, that's a huge, huge problem. I mean, I think 10% of the emissions is from wasted food globally.
Huge.
That's really where we start is like, how do we build this infrastructure? It takes a lot of effort, and most of our team is really focused on just building those across the
Yeah.
US.
Well, what
But
is
then
it
it's really
when
the
you
data.
say infrastructure? Because just assume everyone
Yeah.
here is like,
Yeah.
no idea. Like I could tell. I think I know. But like, what is like? Give an example of the infrastructure, and let's say just start with like a grocery store, for example.
Yeah, so like the infrastructure that we're building is, these are 15-acre sites. They're enclosed buildings that we're actually consolidating the wasted food. And from, let's think about California, Northern California, where we have a facility. We're working with over 1,500 grocery stores and food manufacturers in the Northern California Bay Area and collecting all of the unsold food through this one site. So on a daily basis, we have, trucks of food waste coming in, where we are then analyzing it. So we have our data that we kind of in our IT that we layer on top of this. To collect any information from that. So we're identifying like weights, categories, departments, and like, okay, where could there have been like prevention opportunities? But then it's going through a series of depackaging. So we're actually opening up, breaking open the depackaging, gathering the organics from it. And it's a pretty, it sounds simple, but it's a complex mechanical process because we've got 100,000 tons a year going through each of these facilities. It's like really hard to even comprehend how much that is. Um,
It's an insane amount, and I
yeah,
think that a lot of people, like most people, don't know what happens
yeah,
when something even goes in a bin. And I mean, you see it sort of at a facility, but I don't think before you guys not there were no facilities that were focusing solely on like how do we approach food waste, which is in some ways like akin to recycling, but it's a whole other world.
and that was like the main problem is we kind of knew that it was an issue, but it was just going into a giant pit, and everyone was like, "Well, what else do we do with it?" And so it was kind of this like awkward conversation and like dance we were doing. It was like a middle school dance always, where it was like, okay, we know it's a problem, but I can't solve it if I'm a retailer or a grocery store. And then the waste haulers are like, well, we're not going to solve it because we're just bringing this stuff and transporting it into, a landfill. It takes a lot of effort. And so, yeah, I think, we were really at the forefront of I would say exposing, but kind of like bringing to light. And we started at a very small scale. In 2007, we were working in the back of grocery stores. It was like the true garage story, only not with like computers. It was like bins of food waste and like
And you
mixing.
guys are just hand sorting it.
Yeah, and understanding like what is really happening here and how much. And we realized very quickly it's not only environment. There was a true business opportunity to actually segregate this, but you needed to be able to build something that was easy for them, like a grocery store to operate. And that's where we started was a grocery because, there's 60 some thousand grocery stores across the country, major nexus for where our food goes, where most of us shop to get our food. So it was like, okay, there's some scale here, and we need to build solutions at scale because the one-off sites that are kind of popping up here, or you have a grinder in the back of your kitchen. Those are great steps, but it's not going to solve at scale. I think
Yeah.
they're complementary, and so that's where really we were focused on. Let's start with grocery and build something that can scale across the country.
Yeah, so when you say like, so let's say truck comes in from grocery store
Hmm.
in a bin, goes to facility, and then what happens after it's processed?
Yeah, so our facility, like bins come back. We built reverse logistics so we don't have to pick up from every store. So you think about a traditional trash truck, it goes to
Yeah.
every house or it goes to every store and picks up in a dumpster. We built where we completely eliminate the that kind of backdoor pickup. So it actually goes back to their distribution centers where then it gets loaded onto our truck. So we can service 200 some grocery stores out of one facility, one distribution center. So we
Yeah.
just out of the start, we minimize all that transportation that's happening, those fossil fuels associated with that. So then once it gets to our facility, we're dumping it into our equipment, depackaging it. It's like a liquid smoothie, the grossest smoothie, you've ever seen and smelled, but it goes into what we call an anaerobic digester.
Yeah.
So this is like I think of it as a giant stomach, and it's an alternative to composting, but we're able to process significantly more and be located in more urban, close to where the food is being grown and distributed.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's a wet process. So you think about food as 70% water. So we're actually able to capture all that water. We're actually able to capture the nutrients, and it's a giant stomach that's breaking down and using bacteria, a natural organic process, to break down the food waste. The methane is then captured, and we turn that into renewable energy. And then we capture the nitrogen and phosphorus and other nutrients off of the solids, and we can then use that for soil enhancement and future production. So we're kind of, how do we gather all the water, the carbon, and nutrients from the wasted food? Um, and we all know that that's not like the intent. We don't want to get to that point. Uh,
Yeah.
but the reality is that that's, pretty significant right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty incredible that one, there's just like, there's so, we learn this so much about wasted food that there's just like this crazy amount of opportunity. Like, there's just so much, I mean, and we say it as business people, like, there's just a lot of monetization with wasted food in many directions that it can head. And for so long, it was just going straight to landfill. Like, all of that extraction sort of was just like nullified in many ways. And then just off gas, which is like, I'm sure you and I both look at it and we're like, well, no, duh, but like, everyone sort of didn't see it that way. A little bit in like this journey of as Divert built from like back of store to these sort of cutting edge, like pieces of technology that now process. What's your career journey been like? Like, where did you start? And now you are like, you're here and you're continuing to build this massive movement, and every second I hear about Divert, there's like another facility's coming on, and so share a little bit about what it was like for you.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question, and probably one I don't sit back and reflect on enough.
That's why we do these conversations, and
Yeah,
people want to know, because there's a lot of folks who want to get jobs in sustainability. There's a lot of people who, like, the entrepreneur's journey in sustainability is its own, as you know,
yeah,
headwinds galore.
right, right, and I think,
Share your journey.
and it could be rose-colored glasses, right? Like a lot of us that are passionate want to be in sustainability, but truly building a business, a sustainable business around that is just as hard as if you're building any other business, and maybe even harder because of all of the, you're breaking a lot of traditional foundational practices that are happening today. But yeah, for me, I started in engineering and wasn't a good one. But like was just like I loved like looking at a problem and breaking it down and then how do we solve that problem practically and thinking about like the people that are involved in that and how do we set up processes. I like loved putting those together and mapping that out. My team always like makes fun of me because I'm always making maps and it's like, okay, we get
The
it.
true engineer.
Yeah, yeah. Like spreadsheets and maps. So when I started in like the energy sector, like how do we change? Because energy was a huge, fossil fuel, the impact of that. I am also just very passionate about food and whether it's being involved on farms or local restaurants or friends that are doing things or trying to, build food accessibility in certain areas that I lived. And this is really marrying those two together. I was working on some farms in Vermont, actually, and they were taking food waste from like Ben and Jerry's and some of the other places in that area, and they had a very like rudimentary digester where then they were mixing it with cow manure and generating renewable energy on site. And it was another way for them to monetize it, which dairy farms are struggling and continue to. So it was like they had to get creative. And that was like my first kind of sinking my teeth into real commercialized and being
Mm.
like, hey, this is something that really could work, not without its challenges. And Ryan at Divert reached out to me, and we were, kind of in that startup phase of let's try to build like modular facilities to service a full grocer because they had already done a bunch of work, up to that point. And it was kind of that like 0 to 1 step. And I think we were at like point 0.7 at the time, and it was like, okay, we got to really build this out. So our first couple of facilities, we were all there on forklifts, working directly with the retailers on transportation. I think I bought our first trucks at Divert, our first trailers in terms of when we were doing that, and like setting up offtake partnerships. And it was that grit and that grind that was really, really fun. But it was also navigating kind of uncharted territory of regulatory. The states didn't understand like how to fit this in, like what mold do
Yeah.
you divert into, and we were like, we're a new thing, and so we had to kind of help with that. But now we're in this growth phase. We moved on past the teenage years, and it's like, okay, now we got to scale this. We've proven it out.
Yeah.
And the thing that I really enjoyed along my path was it was kind of utility when I first joined. It was like wherever we need people to work, very entrepreneurial. But I always found myself, and I think Divert is as a whole, very customer led and customer focused.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a key for us of not losing sight of that, not building solutions because we think that they're the right thing, but actually working with our customers to do it and integrate into their supply chain, integrate into their tech stack. Like, how do we actually do that with them and solve problems for them operationally as well as logistically or whatever it may be? And I think it took us a while. I mean, 17 years and, we're still slow growth, but I think that's why we really were disciplined to make sure that we're building stuff that's sustainable and for our customers.
Yeah. On your journey, how do you bring the practice of the customer into your day-to-day work? Like, is there a toolkit in the way you think about it? Do you standardize? I mean, you've got a framework somewhere.
Yeah, just in terms of how we interact with
Yeah,
customers.
like how do you do? Are you researching? What are the feedback loops? Like, how do you guys think about build? Like when you build?
Yeah. Honestly, initially it was more organic, right? Like, I didn't have a
Okay.
playbook. I can't like was an engineer, but it was all about relationships and also solutions mindset. So it was working with them, breaking down the problem and then understanding, well, what are their pain points? Like what are your parents? And there's this curiosity that we had that whether it was a store manager or a produce clerk or someone sitting in the corporate office, like we were spending time with everybody and actually getting out there and doing it with them and not being afraid to be like, let's just get started. Like, let's just do something and like kind of start it and it will form from there. That's where I think actually having a bunch of engineers was helpful, where we could kind of move this thing forward and be like, okay, shed that didn't work, and there was no ego to it. It was like we have an idea, and we got to continue to mold it and measure success along the way. My like standard practice early on was be flexible and be open and kind of listening and know what you're measuring, like know what success looks like and stay true to that. And then as we've scaled, we've had to build more structure, of course. We can't just be like, okay, we're gonna go try this thing over here and this. It's a little bit more like we have a highway we're on now. We were taking a lot of back roads, I think, early on, but I think that's where you kind of figure out where we need to go.
Yeah, that's super cool. So how do you guys, when you're doing like your partnerships and like your diversion, if you will, where does stuff go? Like in different parts. Like if something's getting in a bin or you guys are grabbing it, like I know it doesn't always end up in the stomach, if you will. How like what ecosystem?
Everything starts at the sales floor of the grocery store, and you guys get this too, right? There's a lot of things that are happening, and there's a short window for perishable food and how it's managed. And it's very different regionally. And so we really took ourselves to the shelf. When you're culling a product, what's the steps you go through? If you're, at a grocery store and you pull a case or a clamshell of strawberry, what are those decisions you're making and what are the avenues? And is it very clear and standardized? And we're almost like a new backstop for that. So like, don't even talk about trash when it comes to food in a grocery store. You have Divert at the backstop, but we want to layer ourselves with the Feeding Americas and the food donation side, as well as, further up the chain and what you all are doing in terms of like discounting, markdown, how do you capture more value of that? And so we were like, we're not gonna, necessarily build facilities that to donate food. There's already a network out there of over 200 food banks within Feeding America, as well as other partner agencies. So our goal was, how do we empower both the retailer as well as Feeding America with information, best practices, and almost be the conduit between all of those, because there has been like kind of a separation of, oh, okay, the recycler is taking the food, the good food, or the stores are putting it in there because and it's all the good food is going into this bucket. It's like, all right, well, let's put this all together and make it really easy for them, because these are people that have hundreds of things to do daily, and their
Yeah.
goal is to sell food. So it's got to be really easy. And so we really made sure that we could be a better backstop and provide more information in real time to people upstream that could then prevent the waste. And so our goal is really, can we measure that reduction over time at our facilities? And what we're truly seeing then is inedible food coming to our facilities and
Yeah.
not edible food.
That's super cool. Well, you've worked in the sustainability space. We work in the world of end of life, like processing facilities. Like nothing is awesome. But with that being said, like like what are the sort of like unsavory or things that you guys have done or you've seen that you're like, dang, I just wish we would have actually done it. We call this the leftovers because it's like oftentimes you like don't eat it, could eat it, throw it out. But what's something out there that you're like, that was a leftover and I'm glad I chucked it, or that was a leftover and I wish I would have eaten it in your like career.
Wow, in my career. Um, there's probably a number of things that I wish I would have stuck with or took on. I mean, but this is one that is I never really thought of myself as like a career person. I'm more of like a project person. I'd love to see them come to fruition. And this has been a very much a career. I mean, almost decade long with Divert. And I think the reason that I've stayed is that it's and been so passionate about it is it's just the growth, the way that we all work together and the culture that we've built. That's what makes, a good company. And yeah, when I think about just even at Divert, there's been a number of things where we're like, that's a really cool idea and there's something really there, but it's just not the right time, or we're not quite set up to be able to do it yet. Even going all the way upstream to, like tracking inbound products from the farm or from the producer to the grocery store, and actually being able to prevent the waste or help them, empower them with different data. And we all know like data is great, but too much of it, if it doesn't have a home, is like not very useful. And then it's like
Yeah.
building. So it's all time and place. And I think we, continue to have these good relationships with a lot of our retail partners and other solutions partners. Those things can evolve as we all grow in the industry and start to become more sophisticated when it comes to our like circular economy. I think that's what's exciting about it is I think this is like just getting started. And there's a lot of growth for, in this space.
Well, I love it. Well, my last question is because it's truly the leftovers, and I'm sure you have a fridge,
Mm.
what leftover is sitting in your fridge right now? And are you going to eat it or not?
Obviously, in working in this space, I'm very conscious and try to eat everything in the fridge. Right now, we're going. My wife and I are about to have our first baby, so it's like we are having, it's like meal prep and all this stuff in the fridge, and which is great. So we've got a lot in the fridge right now, actually, and in our freezer, getting ready for this. But what I love to do, and I've got a bunch of like, vegetables or avocados or even like onions, things that you use when you're cooking. My favorite thing to do is put anything between two slices of bread. And so, like, I love it. Like,
Sandwich, chaos sandwiches?
chaos sandwiches or a tortilla or anything with like a flatbread, anything with like where you can just use your hands and eat it.
Yeah.
Um, I think I, probably uncomfortably like put a lot of different stuff together when it comes to that and just kind of look what's in the
Yeah.
fridge and get creative. So,
We
yeah,
had
that's
a chef on the show who said they turned everything into a sauce. So I feel like
nice.
between everything being a sauce and then for you everything being a sandwich, we're well on our way to starting a restaurant with
There,
everyone that's come on.
this could be a zero waste restaurant. Like,
It's not that hard. If you
no,
just roll up whatever. Well, Ben, this has been amazing. Thank you for joining me today and sharing the story of Divert and your story. Everyone should follow Ben because Ben's also like out there on the on the path. The content is awesome. The work you're doing is awesome. I'm sure you've got 10 more years or more in the space.
hopefully.
But it's truly tremendous what y'all have done from like very humble backroom beginnings to you made it sound so eloquent, but I don't think people know how massive these facilities are that are getting built.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it, and thanks for having me. This was fun. We make it sound, and I think everyone from the outside seems like okay, things are progressing, but it was messy. I mean, and it always is, and I think that's kind of the fun part of it. And like you said, there's going to be leftovers that you wish you would have, eaten, or ones that you're fine not touching.
Yeah.
And we had our fair share of those, and I think it's just as you're, that entrepreneurial mindset and building businesses, it's working through those and pushing through those. And I think we have our fair share of those as well. And hopefully, we have another 10 plus years to keep moving this forward and work alongside what you guys are doing.
Are you guys ever going to open up facility tours for the public?
That could be. We've done in terms of like our Northern California facility,
Yeah.
we've done some stuff there. But yeah, I
Because
think
usually
that,
you can go do like a landfill visit and like Recology will do it. I just kept thinking
yeah,
like no one's like I
yeah,
bet you there's like packs of college students that just want to see what's going on.
totally. I think there's like a huge
And me.
educational. Yeah, well, anytime, let me know, and we're not far from you, so
I know.
yeah,
No one's given me the like invite to come in. It's like, yeah,
noted. Next time I'm out there.
next time. All
Yeah.
right. Well,
All right.
thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Jordan.
Appreciate it.